What's up, guys? Disclosure Artist here, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about some more of the extraordinary stories that I've heard from my passengers. Um, this is the stuff that would be on my podcast if I were to have them live interviewed on it. It would be to discuss things like this. I've collected a few of the most interesting tales, so I'm going to share them with you right now. One passenger was a female, probably in her teens, high school age, and she told me that on one occasion, I think she was describing somewhere Midwest. I could be mistaken, but it was by a country area. It was desolate, and it was an area that she knew very well. And she was with a friend, and they were driving down the road, again, down a road that she's probably grown up with and has spent years driving down and is very familiar with, where she's going down this road with her friend in the car, and they look out the windshield, and they see, like, I think she described to me, like, it was either a tunnel or it was a passage, that, like, a pathway that she had never seen before. Genuinely was not there ever until this moment. And they continued to go down it, and basically wound up in an area that was completely unfamiliar to them, and she didn't recognize any of her surroundings. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, I've heard this sort of thing before when I listen to the people who write into Mr. Politis when they're going, down a hiking trail or something like that, and especially in situations where they're very familiar with it, and all of a sudden they'll find themselves in a place that's completely unrecognizable. It's like they walked into another dimension. So this is what this girl's telling me, and at this point they're spooked because, again, they don't recognize anything around them, and she's driven down this road for 8 years, so she knows what it looks like. And at this point they see she told me that she saw a road sign that was bent over horizontally, as opposed to all of the other ones that are in that area that are vertical, or they just look completely different. And I have family in South America, so I'm familiar with how some of the light poles look over there, and they are horizontal. So maybe she was, who knows where they went, where things look that way, different time, different place, different dimension, who knows. But sitting on that light pole that she said looked very odd and unfamiliar were two cloaked entities. They were both wearing hoods, and they were both just kind of sitting perched on this thing. And she looked up at them, and her friend basically instructed her to look away, don't make eye contact, like she knew something about what was going on. And she couldn't help herself. She held her gaze away from it, but then as they were passing it, she turned around and looked out the back window, and those entities were still there, looking at them. This time they were facing the same direction. And I can't recall how she mentioned that they found their way back onto the normal path or into the normal world, but it seems as though they got turned around somewhere up there and found their way back, and everything turned back to normal. But it was extremely strange, and she told me there was definitely something weird about it. And then I offered what I thought maybe one of my solutions were to what might have happened to her. So that's the first story. Another one is super strange, because this guy I actually met once before, because he worked for a friend of mine years and years ago, before the pandemic even happened, and he actually almost died. He almost suffered an ill fate prior to the pandemic even happening. on account of a fluke medical freak situation that happened to him. Luckily, he survived, not only because, it's great that he lived, but also because he could tell me this story that I otherwise never would have heard or been able to share with you. And this one's a real doozy. So when I see the passenger's name, I immediately am like, no way, this can't be the same guy. It turns out it was, and I hadn't seen this dude in at least 3 years, if not more. I only saw him once, but I remembered the name. I just have a brain for words and names. And yeah, by some fluke of the universe, it was the same guy, and we ended up getting into the old conversation, and as I do. And he basically, when I asked him what's the strangest thing that ever happened to him, I realized that I was preaching to the choir, because he then dropped this story on me. He told me that when he was a younger person, was with 3 of his other friends. They were traveling in a car to one of the friends' houses in what he described a very remote location. Very, very low population density. They said that as they were pulling their car, so it was 4 people in the car, as they were pulling their car up to the house, basically they saw what appeared to be a cat on the lawn that was frozen, as in petrified, like it couldn't move at all, like a statue. And I've heard this time and time again from Canon Missing Project, or Skinwalker Ranch. This is what they do. They have technology that can freeze a biological form right where it stands, as if it's a statue. So I already am getting buttered up for what he's going to say next. So basically, they continue to drive their car. This is on the neighbor's lawn. This is a few houses down from their final destination. As they're pulling up to this house, they see the lights are flickering, both outside and inside, like as if it was some sort of Halloween decoration. I'm picturing the real life, or if there's some sort of electrical disturbance, and they're thrown off from this, and they basically see an alien gray moving around. Its head was above the white fence, so it was in the backyard, but they could see it moving around, and that's what caught their attention. And they just stopped dead in their track, looked at it, all 4 of them shocked. They couldn't say a word, and it wasn't until it blinked that they all started to freak out. This is what he told me. Once they saw that it blinked, they went from being cool to absolutely losing their minds, freaking out. So then they started to try to drive away, to get away from this thing, and it lifted its hand, this is what he told me, and made one of the parked adjacent cars slide in front of the path of their car, as if to block them from leaving, so as to prevent them from leaving. At this point, they smashed into that car and drove past it. This thing's using telekinesis to basically attempt to capture them, or do something, prevent their movement. This terrified them. They all immediately sped off, drove straight to, I think he told me it was Home Depot, or a hardware store, to pick up a bunch of bats, or different varying tools, weapons, whatever they could, to defend themselves and kill this thing, or come after this thing. Of course, when they returned, it was gone, but what they found in the backyard was nothing short of pure carnage. He said there was something like 20 chickens that were just slaughtered all over the place, blood everywhere, their bodies just splaying about, massacred, if you will. And that was what he told me. And I said, okay, well then, you definitely are in the circle, and you know what's out there, or to some degree what's going on. So yeah, I listened to this and I heard this and I vetted him, and holy moly. The last story I'm going to leave you with right now is one of a serendipitous nature, in the sense that you guys are aware of what's going on in the ufology community. I'm not really going to get into it too much. But basically, this guy used to be an affiliate. I don't think we spoke for a good amount of the trip, but then somehow I get the instinct or the calling or whatever it is to start these conversations. And it turns out that this guy used to work with Mr. Corey Good, and basically moved away from civilization as we know it, to Mount Shasta a number of years ago, to live a more centered, simple, and truthful, organic life, I guess he was trying to communicate to me. And when I mentioned what was going on with that guy's life, his opinion was that he was just a misunderstood person, and he didn't want to say much more about that, who's been through a lot, etc. So it seemed as though he was sympathizing with him, but again, might not really know what's going on because he's moved away from society and perhaps has missed out on a lot. When I mentioned Jay Widener's name, he didn't even know who that was, or I think he mentioned to me that or his opinion was that people who thrive on conspiracies make their living off of this and drama, etc. So I didn't really take too much to heart what he was talking about with regards to his opinion on either of those people, because it was communicated to me that he himself has intentionally removed himself from the loop. So I was wondering kind of just if he knew what was going on, and it really didn't seem like he did. So in regards to that, but then the conversation shifted to his personal life, and he started mentioning to me how, after moving to Mount Shasta, which we all know is a very special place for so many different reasons, not going to get into them, but he mentioned to me that after his personal experimentation with DMT, dimethyltryptamine, or the God particle, for example, his personal contact with ETs became very intense. He said that he's seen every number of ET, that we talk about, from greys to reptilians to insectoids, etc. But he was mentioning that a most recent thing that occurred to him was that he was sleeping in his bed at night, and he was being visited by the greys, and his whole attitude towards the thing was quite cavalier. It was pretty funny. This is exactly what he said. These were just his words. I'm repeating them because these are someone else's words. And he said that, they were coming into his house, and he was projecting an annoyed type of vibe. He said that he was irritated by their presence. And he would have these greys just hovering with their faces directly over his head, up in his face. And he said that once he started projecting a loving Christ consciousness vibe, they went away. And I said, I wasn't expecting him to feel any which way about the whole experience, but it seems as though he wasn't enjoying it, from our conversation. So, do your own homework. I thought you guys might enjoy these stories that came firsthand from people sitting right here in this seat behind me. And it's a never-endingly interesting experience. Alright guys, stay tuned.